Rainbow Nation has been used frequently since 1994, but is it truly deserved? Some argue the social cohesion project still has a long way to go. The recent Stellenbosch University urination saga makes that glaringly clear. Let's speak to Inclusive Society Institute's CEO, Daryl Swanepoel. Daryl, good morning and thank you very much for your time. You know, we've noted with every race-related incident that the country's wounds are opened yet again. It's like for every step taken towards racial equity, it seems there are two taken backwards. The question then is, will South Africa truly realize the dream of this Rainbow Nation?
Well, I think it is certainly possible. We do an extensive study into social cohesion, and we measure it along the lines of demographic integration, you know, of people starting to socialize across racial boundaries. We also look at your sense of connectedness to the country. If the popo hits the fan, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay in the country and make it work, or are you looking for greener pastures abroad? And your sense of connectedness to your community. If you're highly connected to your community, the chances of the community coming together in cases of disaster is very strong. So we found that if you look at racial integration, there's a mixed bag. Less than half of the nation, 47.96% to be precise, of the population believe that it is possible to form a united nation out of the different groups in the country. But the dichotomy is that it is contraposed by a high willingness and desire to actually unite the nation. 73.54% of the respondents indicated that they actually desire to build that nation. So I think what has happened is that under the Mandela years, the Rainbow Nation years, great strides were made to bringing the nation together, but it waned somewhat, and trust in society has diminished, and because of that diminishing trust, the doubt has set in. But if you look at the desire and the willingness to get together, it is actually very, very strong, as is the sense of community. 75% of South Africans believe it is important to get involved in your community. And if you look at socialized racial bounds, that is, you know, do you have friends from across racial boundaries? Do you entertain across racial boundaries? Do you go to church? You know, 64.9% of respondents indicated, for example, that they enjoy working together with people groups. So it's certainly possible, but there's a lot of work to be done. And I think that we need to fix that. We need to get the trust fixed, and we need to get the political rhetoric in the country right, because the rhetoric doesn't match what is happening amongst ordinary South.
Which is what I was going to get to now, that clearly there's a sense, I'm getting a sense that there's a desire to unite and to work across racial lines or integrate and interact with each other. But somewhere something is blocking this. So the question then is, how do we somehow unite South Africans? Because if we look at the monumental flag matter, we all know that a flag is not there for aesthetic appeal. It represents certain ideals. But beyond that, citizens need to experience that which is represented by the flag, be it your social cohesion, democracy and diversity. Do you honestly believe citizens currently are experiencing that which is represented by our very flag?
No, they're not. And there's two areas to fix it. The first is build trust in the country. If you look at the trust, we say that it is very, very low. Trust along racial grounds, along within your community, across religious lines, and specifically trust in government's performance is very, very low in the country. So if you build that trust, you will build a desire to get together. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I get a sense that social cohesion is treated as a side issue. You know, it's something that we do during public holidays. We from time to time hold a summit on social cohesion. But if you study mechanisms to improve social cohesion in other countries around the world, you need to look at well, first of all, government needs to be ready. They need to know what their goal and their objective is. They also the communities need to be regularly engaged, and there needs to be long-term partnerships established between civil society, the communities and government. So it needs to be done on a much more structured basis than we are currently approaching it. But as I said, the big thing in the country, of course, is rebuilding that trust that is waned in the previous administration.
Should it really be left to government to unite us, or citizens need to do this themselves? Because they've done many things. They've toppled apartheid by themselves, really. So is it really advisable for them to look to government to unite them in their various communities where they exist among each other?
Government has got an extremely important role to play. That will be the glue that puts it together. But you're quite right. This is not a job for government alone. This is a job that needs to be done in partnership with the community. So we need to get civil society much more involved. We need to get the churches involved. We need to get cultural groups involved. It needs to be a team effort to attract to deal with this issue of social cohesion, and also business. You know, many times people say that social cohesion is a nice to have. It's a soft issue. It is not. It is an extremely important economic issue. It is an extremely important security issue. If you do not have social cohesion in the country, then forget economic growth. So the message to business is that if you were to invest your billions of rands and you don't have social cohesion, it's going to come to naught. Get involved to ensure that the community in which you're operating is a community that gels, that works together, that cohesively can take the country forward.
Then let's take a look at inequality, particularly in the education system, if we can. I mean, if we look at the education system currently, it's characterized by crumbling infrastructure, overcrowded classrooms, and relatively poor educational outcomes, which one could argue in itself perpetuates inequality. Is this not where government perhaps should focus all its energy to perhaps assist in addressing the legacy of apartheid?
Sure. We have actually done quite intensive research into the causes behind inequality, because we do know that inequality remains stubbornly high between the various races, and that's what we're talking about in terms of social cohesion as well. It still remains 3-1, but we did study into what is it that causes it. And we looked at issues such as generational wealth. We looked at the impact of the top 1% on inequality, and then we looked at the impact of population growth and the labor market. And what we have found is that generational wealth, in fact, very marginal difference. The top 1% doesn't really make a big difference in reducing inequality. The big problem is structural unemployment that we have in the country. So my message always, it's the economy über alles. If you grow the economy, you will have more people in jobs. If you have more people in jobs, you create hope in society and you reduce the gap between the various races. So all effort of the government, I believe, should be now focused on building and rejuvenating the economy.
Daryl, thank you very much for your time. That was Inclusive Society Institute CEO Daryl Swanepoel.